clay without using a pasta machine. See you then. Hi everyone, I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. Sorry for being off the last couple of weeks. At some point I'm going to do a video explaining the whole setup with my health problems and why I end up with so many days off. So big apologies for that for you all, but I have to do what I have to do. It's not fun, but there we are. Right, this week I wanted to make, oh my dear, my voice is croaky. Hi Hi, Fairy Hedgehog. Right. Don't know why it is. I can talk fine all day long, all week long. The moment I get on stream, my voice wants to go croaky. It's so annoying. But there we are. I'm going to make a cane, which I made before. It's, if you don't know, it's basically where you make a very thick picture, and then as you push on the clay, the picture remains. It shrinks down in size and goes up into a long stick. And if you slice through the stick, then you end up with the same image all the way through. It's like a stick of rock.
Liz says, hello, so happy to see you.
Hello, Liz. It's brilliant to be back, and I'm really glad to see you too. A lot of canes, people use pasta machines to get very, very even sheets of clay. I know a lot of people don't have a pasta machine, so I'm going to do a pretty basic kaleidoscope cane, and my pasta machine will stay on the shelf. All I'm going to need is my rolling pin. This is a Perspex rolling pin. You can get them cheap as chips off of all the online places. Now, the other thing that I hear a lot is people saying, great, I've now got my cane, what do I do with it? So I have already showed on previous ones how to make a soap dish out of it. I think I've shown how to decorate a frame in canes. This week, got another idea for you all, and that's these. If you see, I wear a Alice band. Go back through my videos, most of them I'm wearing them, especially since I've got long COVID hair now. You can get a pack of 10 metal Alice bands, £3.13 no postage I paid for these on eBay. But Amazon's got a host of all other places have got them. Have a look around, wherever suits you best. But you want to put in metal Alice band and you get these up. Now, because polymer clay is actually quite flexible, if you keep it thin enough, it should be able to do fine on an Alice band. What I've done to help myself is I've got one and I masking taped it just by literally rolling the roll around, left a little bit either side, because that's going to go down by your ears and you want it as thin as you can, especially if you're a glasses wearer. The reason for the masking tape, firstly to show you where you're going to stop claying, secondly it helps grip the clay, because obviously metal's very slidey, so this is just going to give it an extra layer to help it grip onto. You can use PVA glue. You can, if you really got the arm strength to do it, sit there and sand it and buff it up and scratch it, but you just want something that's not too smooth a surface. So let's get started with all this. Now we got a couple of canes in canes going on here. So I'll show you that first. These are basically bullseye canes but done square, and we're going to change the size of this throughout the cane, but what you need is some basic squares. So I'm going to show you how to do it on the last colour permutation. So we've got white, black, grey, white, and we're doing grey, white, black. So what I've done is first of all made a little stick out of my grey into the square shape. You can use your rolling pin to do that. Just keep going on the side, flip it over on the side like that, and then come in and pinch the corners so that they're nice and sharp. Then basic bit of clay. If you see, I'm not that bothered about the thickness being completely even, and what that gives you is that slight waviness, not perfect uniformity, and I think it actually looks, I like that better. You can, if you want, spend ages making sure they're all exactly perfect thickness. when do I measure anything? So with that in mind, this also hasn't been measured. So long as you've got it roughly the same width, but again, you can just trim the ends off if you don't want to measure that. I like to put mine and line it up with a corner. Can you see? So then you're gonna make sure you've got no air traps. How you do that is you're pushing from the middle out like that, and then flip it over from the middle out to the end, so the air's going out. And when you get back to meeting up with your white again, you just come in with your tissue blade and trim it like so. This really is a good channel for anyone who hates measuring and wants to eyeball everything, because I eyeball everything, and
Yeah.
I show you that it actually, it's fine, you can make it work.
You need to show what you took off.
I'm just taking off, can you see that little scrappy bit of extra white where it weren't in line with the grey? So the little off overhang.
Yeah.
And I'm making sure that the clay's properly around that middle bit. Like so. You want to, don't take off anything that's good. So really try and keep it. Helps if I have my blade up the right way. If you cut a cane and you smush it down with the top instead of the sharp end. Never cut my fingers doing that, but what you do is you smudge the whole cane end. All you need to do if that happens is just take off a thin slice and put that in your scrap, because it just smudges the top surface, so don't worry. So that's our first wrap round.
If you show it side on, you can show it's perfectly flat now. Why not show that? Oh yeah, there you go. You can see it's
there you
perfectly
go.
flat.
It's all perfectly flat. It's all
On the cut end.
perfectly smooth. Do not throw away your scrap bits. There's a million uses for scrap clay. The only time clay ends up in the dustbin is if it's had a reaction to plastic and has gone all melty and like you've covered it in glue. Or no, that's really it. So long as you've not, if you've got anything mixed in it, even the bake bits that I've off-cut, I've used in scrap, because you can get really interesting patterns. Right, so if like me and you measure in wrong and you go, oh look, I've not got enough, all you need to do, where's my black drawer? There we are. Get some more black and just fill in the gap. You don't need to freak out. I would advise not pulling it off and reshaping the whole thing, because extra work. When you shrink down a cane, all these messy join lines vanish. So you really do not need to worry. The only time I would say pull the black off and reform it as a single sheet is if you're really bothered about the colours all being absolutely uniform thickness all the way around.
Or if you've run out of black.
If I'd run out of black, do you know what I'd do?
Right.
Put a bit of silver in there.
Well, yeah.
Call it a feature. Nobody knows what the plan to your cane is other than you in your head. And the amount of happy accidents I've had that have worked out brilliantly. So just don't freak out. Go, okay, this is leading to something. It's always leading to something. You just didn't know what it was at the time. And something that a lot of people are uncomfortable about doing, and I understand it, but let me put a suggestion out to you all. Don't plan a cane out. Just sit there, think a triangle on your board, and just fill it up with things. Put some spirals in, put some squiggly bits in, make a teardrop, anything. Think basic shapes and just fit them all in with that triangle and see what it looks like. It will tessellate up lovely.
Because it's a triangle.
And what that's doing is it's getting you in the habit of claying without freaking out over not planning. Sometimes you don't need to plan that much. You end up somewhere that you never thought you would. You see, I'm just wedging a bit of black in, and I'm just going to literally cut round it. So get my blade back, go like that, like that. That side's full. Sorted. So it looks like there's lots of joining lines. Absolutely fine, I promise you. I'll show you. It looked like we done it absolutely professionally perfect first time. Whoop. Cutting the ends off just so it's smooth. Now you do end up with a whole lot of scrap clay from doing cane work. If you're able to separate it back out into its colour, then that's good, but bits like that I put in a pile, and I'll show you what I do with some of my indie bits afterwards. Yeah. I don't know if it's dry in here or what. We've had the heating going a lot. It's been freezing.
Also, it's a bit dusty, I think.
Right. So, 3 rectangles. This I literally made a teardrop and just wrapped a bit of white around the outside, like pretty much the same as these. So the only other component I'm going to do is a really basic rolling pin skinner blend. Now, a skinner blend, it lets you have a faded colour from one of your colours to the other colour. What you need is a diagonal line, because if you think about it, when we roll it out and fold it over, the mix is going across there. So along that little line there's going to be a tiny bit of white and a lot of black. More white, less black as you go across. So you'll end up with the gradient going that way. Does that make sense? Now, you have a couple of choices. If you want none of the original colour showing, you do triangles with all 3 points like that. If you want some of the colour showing, you put a flat line of what you want left. So anything solid, again, we're mixing that way. So this will mix with that, which will keep it the same. Same on that side. I know it can be a bit of a head mess, because I can't use the F word because we're child safety, to try and cut the top off a triangle and line it up. So this is what I do. I will make one first, do the actual triangle, cut the top off, that bit I chuck into scrap. Then when I made the other triangle, I line up that bottom line with the cut off top line, and sometimes I even end up the top like that. I will just trim it into the shape that I want. So long as you square up one side, you'll be good. Okay, so you end up with off-cut trimmings. Just split them back into their colours and put them back away, or use them in weird little scrappy bits, which I will show you what I do in my little scrappy bits in a minute. Not all scrappy bits are the same. There is different things you can do with different stuff, and scrappy bits of fully made up kaleidoscope canes are gold dust. They're brilliant, the things you can do with them. Now, you know I do that sort of twisty swirly ink block kind of pattern in my clay. I do it on everything. Let me just show you. This is what I'm talking about. That sort of swirly, that's in lots of different colours. Well, as much as you've got no control over what happens on that, and I love that fact about it, what you can do with canes, and I'll show you once we get done with all this, is, I would say, more fun. Right, I'm releasing it with my blade, rolled it out a bit. What you can also do is pinch and stretch from the middle. Then we're going to fold it over. Now, the bits that you need to pay attention to is the line of how much of each of the colours you're leaving yourself. So I want about that much black and about that much white. So I'm moving it over. You can end up with a bow in the middle, and you just pat it down and flatten it out to where you want. Your clay does what you want it to. Don't be scared of it. If it's starting to get a little too long, just give it a push, give it a pull, and it'll shrink where you want to. Just make sure it doesn't do a concertina fold. I know we're getting grubby white. You get less grubby white if you go through a pasta machine, but I think it's going to look fine with slightly grubby or white side. Now we're going to be doing this folding and rolling several times. So if you use a pasta machine, if you don't use a pasta machine, make sure you get used to putting the same colour on the same side. So if I rolled it through like this and then rolled it through like that, the rollers that have the clay residue on it will start tainting the side you don't want. So I say at the very start of it all, keep your lightest colour to the left, light left, and that will help you remember. Now when I'm rolling out, I'm not worried about air bubbles. I can sort them out at the end. I'm not worried that it's not a perfect rectangle. I'm not worried that it's not the same thickness all the way through because I'm pinching and pulling. What I'm doing, the bit that I'm worried about, is first of all, can you see the white wants to go all the way over to that corner there? So we'll end up with no black if I allow that to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm going to push that white back over. No you don't, Sonny, you're coming over that way. See? I'm in control.
Isn't that going to reduce the blend? Isn't that going to make it blend less or something?
No, I'm just literally moving it over to make sure I've got enough. Sorry, he asked, isn't that going to reduce the amount you're blending? In the middle of all that white, there's a lot of black. Don't worry, we'll have a blend still. But just keep in control of how much your middle colour spreads to the end, and if it's going where you don't want it to, push it back where you want. Same with the white on this side. I want some more. You can also take it up the side like that. Just be sneaky with it. And the worst thing that happens is you end up with an interesting end to your Skinner blend, which again can end up really pretty. Out the way, rolling pin. Now I know I've got air bubbles. I'm going to pop them at the end. Some people freak out over air bubbles, and I can understand it if you've made your whole cane and it's all finished and you find an air bubble in the middle and it distorts the whole of that section. So you end up with scrap clay on that section. It's fine.
In this stage
you just, once I've got the fade, I'll pop them all before I do with this what I want to do with this. But yeah, so what I'm saying is be kind to yourself, clayers. And don't be so quick to chuck in a project as not good, because as soon as you start thinking this project's out of control, it isn't going how I expected, you're more likely to put it down and not come back to it, and then it never gets finished, and you never actually get the life experience that it can turn into something amazing. And I was the same, and it's only through years of going, look, you've got to stick with this, that I've learned to relax with my clay. Sometimes Also, the other thing that people freak out over, if you've got enough clay and it's long enough, fold it twice. Fold it 3 times before you roll it. Save yourself the time. It's fine. See? Now, your middle stage is going to look streaky. That is you doing it actually right. When the very first Skinner blend I ever did, when it got to just a little bit worse than this, which it will, I literally scrapped it because I thought it had gone all completely wrong and I'd got all my alignments out. Nope, this is stage of it, and they never show you it on YouTube videos. They just go from the triangle to, and here's the Skinner blend, because it is kind of boring watching someone folding and rolling. That happens, so an air bubble's popped. Ignore it, just smooth it in. Carry on. It'll all look marvellous. I would say maybe 2 or 3 more times. Technically, you can do this without a rolling pin. Can you see how I'm pinching and pulling? Pinch, pull, pinch, pull. Like that. I mean, it's going to be a bit on your hands, and you're better off doing something like getting a knitting needle, or if you have a look, there's a whole lot of things that can work as a rolling pin around your house. I would say don't go to your cooking section and get a wooden one. The clay will stick. You'll end up in a mess. But can you see I'm just pinching and pulling and carrying on like that. So even if you haven't got a rolling pin, you can still do a Skinner blend. So
yeah, if you haven't got a pasta machine.
No, if you haven't got a pasta machine or a rolling pin, look, I'm just pinching and pulling it to fold it over. You're just mixing clay. You don't need all the high-tech gadgets in the universe. Your hands are your best tools. See, look. Pinch, pull, fold, carry on. Right, look how streaky that is. And that is it doing exactly what you want it to. So keep heart. But yeah, when I go out before virus days and I had clay sessions with people, there was a time I forgot my rolling pin and I wanted to do a Skinner blend. I did the whole thing like this.
That is impressive.
No, it's not that impressive actually. It really... Look, can you see how easy it's going along? In a way, you get more of a stretch on it than you do with a rolling pin. Just pinching and pulling. Now, there are times where I quite like the streaky look. So when I'm doing things like sunsets or scenery, if you look at that, doesn't that look like mountains in the distance? Like actual decent scenery. So just a half done Skinner blend can actually have its own real beauty. Just whack a few trees in there, or you can make it a desert scene, do it in yellows and oranges and stick a camel on top. You know, no such thing as a complete mess up. Yeah, the only time I've ever thrown anything away was because it's reacted with glue or varnishes, not because of any clay mistake. Right, I would say I'm almost there. A few more go overs just to get rid of some of this streakiness, and we're going to be where I want it to be. Now, These are harder without a rolling pin, but again, then you can do it. You just use your fingers, do little pinches, and make sure you don't stay on one side for too long. Just keep it moving, keep flipping it, and try and move your clay from the middle to the outside edges rather than from the outside edges, because you'll end up, the flexibility of the clay will mean that that bit moves and that bit stays the same. So if you go from the middle out, you're moving it all. Whoop. I think I'm actually happy with that. I know it's a bit streaky, but I think I actually want a few streaks in this, and it saves me going on for ages. So there we go. I've let the black go a little too far up on the white, but I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely willing to accept that. Now, by pinching and pulling, it looks like I've got rid of all those air bubbles, because when you pull the clay, it can break the air bubble. So I don't think I've got much to pop there. Now, let's form this lot up. My plan was to go like this as the bottom of the triangle. Now, along one side, I'm going to do some of these, what shall I call them? Cubes? Right. I need to shrink this down because it's too big. Now, this is how you shrink a cane. You go from the middle and you pull and squeeze like that,
doing it
evenly as you go. Or you can use a rolling pin, but I find you end up with it folding over a lot more than you get, so you end up with that happening with the clay rather than the middle coming up as well. By pinching and pulling, you are forcing the center to go along with the outside of the clay.
If you just make the outside, you can cut it straight again.
Yeah, if the outside moves, you can just cut the ends off again. You can, they call them end caps, acrylic or glass. If you stick your clay before you start shaping it, the suction will keep the whole of that end flat, so that you end up with less scrap wastage. But I love my scrap wastage. I would be sad if I ended up with none. It is so fun. So all I'm doing is giving myself firstly some more of that bullseye to be able to work with, and shrinking its size so that it's not so chunky against this. And again, I'm going to do the same for the others and get them so that they're uniform-ish size. You could, if you felt really brave, stick them all together and reduce them as one. I think that's risky business, that you're not going to get right into the depth of that middle bit. It is easier to reduce a circle around because you can roll than it is a square or a triangle. But as you can see, squares and triangles and all manner of odd shapes can be reduced just fine. That'll do me for that. Let's do this one. I tend to like to try and make my initial canes into triangles. I find it easier to tessellate triangles. You can do circles and all, you know, tessellation. Look it up, there's a whole lot of shapes that you can do that tessellate. But I don't go that fancy. I may try hexagons at some point, but they always end up round for me. Right, let's take the ends that are distorted. If you've got a really big end like that, just give it a bit more shaping, get it down to uniform. And I'm going to trim off anything that is distorted. Have some tissue, clean my blade. I'm leaving black marks on my white, which isn't what I want. There we go. Now, the trick to the next stage is you want to get your picture as flat as possible. So that's the height I'm starting with, is my teardrop. So that's the bottom point. We're going to go up here, measure that, that's about there. So let's chop a few of these to height. So like that. Oops. Like that. If they're not perfectly the same height, it's fine, we will be able to deal. You'll just end up with a bit more distortion at the end. So that's our first bit, and that's going across like this. Now I'm then gonna shrink it down a little more because I want to go big down into small, into that bottom section. So shrink down some more, and you can take a cane down to any size you want really. They can go really small, but the smaller that you shrink it, the more the small details will vanish. You can also, but it is a lot more sketchy, bring a small bit back up to a big bit. So I'll show you that on a bit of endy clay, some of the offcut of this, when I get done using it, because I don't want to risk distorting my rectangle, my squares rather. Right, shrinking it down, pinching and pulling, and I'm only shrinking down the tip that I need, so they're about the same size. So let's go cutting again. So like that. 1, 2, 3. Now, so they were the outside edge. Now let's go. I'm going to go put the grey in here, then the white, and can you see I'm purposely not lining them up, and I'm not worrying too much about distorted shapes, because I think when they distort a little they actually look nicer. Now I want to also push them so that they're going in diagonal. And again, all this is your own choices. If you want, there are people who make canes that are absolutely perfect in all their lines, really crisp. There's a guy called John Stuart Anderson. Google him. He does the most amazing cane work. It looks painted on, it's so accurate, but I assure you it's all made pictures like this. So I'm going down a bit smaller, and even his stuff, although it looks very daunting, it's possible because he achieved it. So if he can achieve it, then we all can. Have you googled him, Jamie?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Isn't it nuts? That is what you call caning goals. There are a few people, that's what they do. They focus on nothing but making cane work, and they are incredible.
Well, he's used his cane work as the body of animal.
Yeah.
On the front of his page. It's really
Yeah,
good.
it's mad. Mad and awesome. Right, I'm going to push that down. Let's get that black in there, nice and thin and tucked in. There we go, like that. Sounds like my cat's trying to get in.
It does, doesn't it?
You're not allowed in, kitty.
Yeah,
You put hair everywhere. At least he isn't one that tries to eat my creations.
That's true.
There are some nice photos on Polymer Clay groups periodically of people's works all chewed up with cat's teeth marks all through them.
Oh no.
Yep. Especially if he'd done something like made a bird. They're like, well, alright. Sorry about the door rattling sound.
If you can hear it.
And can you see what I mean by distorting the shapes of these actually looks really pretty? Anyone want a cat? Free to any takers. He's moody, he's violent,
No.
he's yelly. All yours. Love him to bits, but oh. Yeah, my Jewish ancestry comes into play. I get all oy vey on him. I do actually have Jewish ancestry, so I'm not being funny or anything there, but yeah, very few things get me doing Yiddish exclamations, but my cat Rufus achieves it every time. Right, can you see how I'm going in? And you could, instead of keeping them in the same lines of colours, you could jumble them around, but I think this is going to actually notice more when we shrink it all down. Personally. And on this side I'm going to go in with this. Now what you've got to remember is whatever you're making, the image on the top has to be the same all the way through your clay. So you can't, I couldn't do that and say let's put some white in, because as I chop down the clay we're going to have all those other colours. I could do that because all the way through there and through there is uniform. That makes sense? So a thick picture, same image all the way through is what you're aiming for. Sorry for sounding exasperated. It's not at you guys or at my clay. It's at my cat trying to sing to you all. Mind you, if you want to hear a loud animal, be around guinea pigs when they think it's their food time.
Oh, yeah.
They beat cats, hands down, for noisy animals. And it's surprising. For an animal that is not just a prey species, but a heavily predated upon animal, you'd think they'd keep as quiet as possible.
But they know they're safe and they know.
They kind of know they're safe. They haven't got the greatest intelligence in the universe. And as far as I'm aware, I think wild guinea pigs do also call to each other. Which is lunacy. Because that's how you become a snack. You're literally the dinner bell. But there we go. And even though I've lived in my house longer than my guinea pigs, because they share my bedroom with me, they have an unwritten rule that anything that is in a rustly packet is not for anyone else other than them, obviously.
Jane Cameron says, yeah, he looks fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I do like caning, and once you take the pressure off yourself, it is so much fun. I have done stuff where you've got to be really measured and really, really uniform, you do end up with a really beautiful cane at the end of it. But I like these sort of freehand, just add bits. So it's calming. Right, just the black around the outside, so probably 3 more bits of this, and then I'll be on to the other side. Here we go. Right. So, has everyone else been getting snow? We have been getting snow, and I've been hearing Texas in America has been getting snow, which blows my mind. They never get snow.
No.
But they are actually under the white stuff. I follow someone on Facebook and YouTube. It's a small farmstead, sort of hobby farm, called I'm a Survivor, because they got together from the Irma hurricane that wiped out everything they had first go around, and then they set up a rescue farm for survivor animals, and wonderful to follow. And they're in Texas, and yeah, they prepped more for the storm, for the ice and snow, than they did for hurricanes.
Jane Cameron says, have you thought about making a guide so it's easy to get all your pieces the same height? I presume they mean...
Oh yeah, you can do measurement guides. What most people do is stick a ruler next to what they're cutting. And you totally can.
I wonder if
but I
Jane
find
has
just...
a jig, as in a physical thing to measure against.
The other thing you can get is a router block, and use that to slide your cane through. But I'm doing a no measurement one. Right, this one here, I'm now going to use that just to fill in that space. So we want to go that way around. I'm going to do a tight pinch to bring it. Let's put the white on the outside, because then it will butt against the black of that side and that white. So let's bring it into a point so we can fill up that space, like so. Bring it in like that. Then I am going to wrap it around. Now, not a triangle, you say. I'm going to force it to be like that. And you can change the height of it to make it in line with everything else. You can really be that rough with it. And if you go, I don't like the amount of single coloured black that's in the middle of that, what you can do is, let's see, where are they? Come in with something like a dotting tool, which again you can get these offline. Punch out a hole through the middle of that, and if you think I'm gonna have trouble fitting some clay into that hole, just literally cut along to it. Then let's get some white. Shape that into a nice round. Like so.
I'm guessing you don't need that one for much.
I will trim it down and make it fit in the space. So like that, and then we bring it back round. We've got a white dot in the middle of it. And you can do things like fit windows into houses that way. You can just fill up boring spaces. So yeah, then you've just got to get a tool to go, ooh, get out of my dotting tool. Like that. Now, the last thing I'm going to do to make sure that I got this pretty triangle shaped is use my blade to just straighten up the sides like so. Here we go, like that. Now let's reduce that down to the size that I want, and again it's the same process as before. You're taking from that middle line and bringing out. I'm going to put end caps on this because it's such a thin cane. Ooh, got 'em. It will just help me keep more. And what the ones I like using, these are glass drinks coasters that had a really ugly picture of I think it was Big Ben or some British landmark, and I just literally, there we go, that'll fit you there, scraped it all off the back, cleaned it up, and then I got glass coasters. So I literally went on to eBay, put glass coaster, and the cheapest one available was the ones I got, and I just took off the really naff image. Right, what you're looking to do when you push it down, you want to make sure there's no air bubbles. So have a look and see if it looks like all the clay is pushed against the glass. You can end up with dips, and if you end up with dips, the clay won't stay flat. So that looks pretty good to me. Then you're coming in, getting your fingers into those gaps and reducing it. Getting started is always the hardest bit when you've got end caps on, I find. But as soon as you've lifted it up enough to get your fingers in properly, you're gonna be fine. Now the end caps, the endy bits of clay, don't shrink down. It's all the middle stuff when you've got end caps on. And I'm just getting in there and making sure my coasters are still stuck down, that the clay's going uniformly up and down. Half the time I don't use end caps and I just reduce without, and I may end up getting annoyed with it and taking them off, mainly because I like the scrap clay that I end up with anyway. But I'm being helpful to you guys because more people like them than don't. But don't forget, you're reducing the points as well, so you don't end up with this thin triangle that's huge because it's still out in the sides. Now I have seen people reduce triangles as circles and then reshape them after. It is possible, but I reckon, to me, it looks a little more complicated. I have done it, but you've got to make sure that you know exactly where all your design is through that circle in order to reduce it, to change it back into the right shape. Which actually isn't as hard as it sounds, because what you'll find on the outside it's not a uniform one colour. So you've got bits of white and blacks and all that, and you just take one stripe of colour and make sure that's all in alignment, and then roll out the circle sides to turn it back into a triangle.
It looks like in places your end cap is coming.
Yeah, I know my end cap isn't perfect, and people do this a lot more, end up with far more perfect ones, but I'm not going to be using this endy bit anyway. It's just to reduce some of the waste, but it's not really waste, it really isn't. So can you see I'm already down to that sort of thickness, so we are getting there. Now, as well as pushing from the middle, do spend a bit of time pushing along the bottom and then flip it over and do the same. Ooh, that's got a bow in it. That's what happens when you get an air bubble. Can you see how the clay, no point using it on this side because that's already happened. Can you see how it sucked in the bottom and the sides went up? If you don't have an air bubble, it does stay flat. You can see why I don't use end caps more, but it's far more easier without. So for me, it's far more easier without, because you can get your fingers in there and reduce it a whole lot quicker. Some people put their clay in the fridge to make it more firm after you've just made up your cane, but like before you do the reducing, and it's meant to make sure that all your clay is the same level of firmness. I do sometimes, if it's one that I've spent a very long time investing and I really want to make sure that the reduction is the same all the way around, but you've got to watch it, because if you leave it in too long you end up with moisture in the clay, and polymer clay hates water. I'm just flipping it round and pulling and squeezing. Now you do end up with quite a nice big reveal at the end, because you don't really get to see what it's like when it's bowing out like that, but you do end up with it all nice in the middle. Right, I'm going to shrink it down a bit more, then I'm going to build it into either a square or a circle. I'm not sure what it'll end up as, and then reduce again. So that it may do it just a little bit more, shrinking down. And this is quite a strain on your hands. There's an air bubble there. If you end up coming across an air bubble, just poke it, push the air out, and hope it hasn't distorted the clay underneath. But on a cane like this, you can call it a feature. Yeah, I'd say that's given me enough clay along there to start doing the forming that I want. So I'm going to cut off all the excess, and that's what we've ended up with. Yeah. So don't throw these, they are golden. So shall we do this as a 4 or a 6? So half. Let's get a ruler so I don't end up wasting it. Measurement. Right, okay, where are we? 0, 2, yeah, almost 20. Let's do that, and then it's 20. There we go. 0 to 20. Let's chop at 10. So I'm going to chop at 10, 5, and 15. And see what that looks like put together. I think blade faced away from you. So can you see the pictures all the way through? What I'm going to do is decide how I like them, and that's why that's looking weird. It's not got the full circle through it. Can you see the distortion that's happened on that bit? It's lost its full circle. So that'll give me 2 different canes actually. So the 2 with the full circle, I chop them in half and use those to put together, and I'll make a separate cane at the 2 that's actually got the distortion without it, I think. But this one, let's go like that, then that way up, isn't it? Like so. Should I do another one in here? Where are we? That way, like that. I can.
And it says, is this the same method they use to put the letters in the rock?
Letters in the rock?
Sticks of rock.
Oh yes, it's sticks of rock, like rock sweets. Yes, it's exactly the same thing, except theirs is with molten hot sugar. I did actually have someone message me who ran a company that did rock sweets saying, do I want to come and work for them? I obviously got the skills for it. I was like, no, hot sugar? Oh no, 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 no. I'm not that competent. I will melt my hands. I worked at a fish and chip shop for one session and realised back then that I was not good with really hot stuff like that all the time. So that's what we're going to end up with. Whoop. Let's line it up. Now I can either push them so that all those points meet in that middle, or I can put a little ball of white in the centre. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do actually. I think I might just give them a bit of a squidge and make sure that they get in there like so. Then we're back reducing again, but we're reducing something that's basically round, which I find a lot easier. But it's the same thing from the center, and we're pushing and pulling. Out like that. And I want to get it so that it's small enough to fit along the width of that hairband. So that's a lot of reducing to be done, yeah? But we can do it. And you can roll now that you're into a circle. But you are going to end up with distortion and scraps and things like that. And I will show you all in a second. Right. Make sure that those lines don't go too diagonally and off of kilter, because that's how you know it's all pretty straight, is by how your lines are looking. So I can tell there's some distortion up there. We'll see what it looks like when it's cut up. I'm sure it'll look fine.
You've used the cane
Yeah. So we've used these canes to make these canes to make this cane. So it's canes in canes in canes.
Canes all the way down.
Canes all the way down, as Terry Pratchett would put it. And we're going nice and long, like so. That looks, yeah, that'll fit fine. Maybe a little bit thinner. Right, shall we see? The big reveal. Do that. Let's bring it up.
So trying to get the focus right because it. No,
You
go,
can
go
see a lot of the detail has vanished from shrinkage, but looking at it myself, you can still see it. But that's what I was aiming for.
Hedgehog says that's pretty.
And thank you. And when I match these ones up, I'll get something different again. Because what I might do with these ones is that.
Turn them into a square cane.
Turn them into kind of a square cane, but
I can't remember the name of that shape.
it's like a diamond.
Yeah. I'll do a diamond.
Do that with it and shrink that down. Now, with endy bits, what you can do, what I like to do, is I get it, I go and twist them. Oops, make sure they're stuck together like this. Twisty, twisty, twisty.
Maria Lee says that really does look like it could be sweeties.
Yeah, it's exactly how they make rock sweets. So twist it, then I cut it lengthways like that, and that's another pattern you've got to use.
Oh, it's not moving the focus.
Let's get the focus in.
There you go. That
And
is amazing.
each of your canes will have a different center, so let's do that with a bit of square and see what that would do, because again I can use these on other projects, or I can do that
You're going to switch it and twist it. Is that what
side twist thing that I did with the other one. Little twists, and the more complex your cane, the more interesting that picture is when you do the side cuts. So this is,
Jane Cameron says, oh, those need antennae.
I know. Let's see what you got. That gives you
Oh, that's really interesting.
zigzag lines, and you can use that, say, on an Alice band. And what I'd do is I'd overlap those bits, which give you another look. The next thing you can do, these little offcuts, put them together in a ball like this,
Jane,
like that.
Jane Cameron says, fuzzy slugs.
They
do look
are.
like
I mean,
fuzzy slugs.
and you have no idea what you'll end up with until you cut through it. So these offcuts, you can then
Twist. Oh, okay, yeah.
either use them like interesting splodges. If you're not happy with what they look like splodged, so you cut it open, you go, that's boring. Form it into a nice stick. Give that a twist. And then you've got either, that's what happens when you cut with the back of the blade. So if that happens, just go slice it with the front. You can either end up with that side of it, or again lengthways, gives you another look.
Sorry, I was assuming you were going to get
Very
close to the camera.
closer to the camera. There we go.
Thank you.
So you see what I mean?
I like that.
All of your
Side.
offcuts can end up with some really funky stuff. Now let's see that's another endy bit. If you twist it and just cut the slice lengthways, it's pretty much the same thing because you moved the pitch on itself. But what you can do is fold it over and then twist like that. Give that a cut. So just keep fiddling with it. Cut off and see what you like.
Ooh.
See what I mean? Why I love ends of canes. So let's see. That was it. Whoop, that was it. Lengthwise, what's it? Widthwise. Oh, I like that. Let's put them together.
That is really cool.
Here we go. See what I mean? So just because you ended up with the cane you thought you wanted does not mean that you haven't got gems all around you. So even things like this, said that's too boring, twist them together. You can either roll that flat like that, so then you end up with shapes twisted.
Gonna decorate
And all these can be smudged flat and put up an Alice band, or used to cover a box, or we can roll them on themselves. So twist strands together is what I'm saying. Let's see what that looks like lengthwise. And I tell you, when I make a cane, I spend hours looking at all the different possible madnesses that you can create. And what I end up with is the project that I planned for, the projects that I end up with tons of things that I really love. So you get what I mean. The other thing I was going to show you is what happens if you reduce a cane too much and go, oh, I needed that a bit bigger. So that's down small, yeah? Let's cut it off so you can see I'm not using...
Are you still planning to decorate?
Yep, I'm just showing them how to fix a common problem of over reduction. So, too small. What you do is you hold it, make sure the sides don't bow, push on it, and you can see it's going bigger again. End up with less height, but what you're trying to do is make sure it doesn't do a zigzag fold over on itself, and then you can just squeeze and it will get bigger. See? We're back to pretty much the same size as it was. See what I mean? Don't freak out if you think you've done your clay wrong, basically. Let's get rid of some of these, and they will probably end up on other Alice bands. So you can see why I'm so like, yeah, I've got lots of scrap over. Oh look, my end cap came off and it all warped. Yay! It means I got so many new pictures to uncover. Which isn't the fault behind caning. I know it's a, let's make it accurate and perfect. But you end up with some absolute gems this way. And I can already see stuff in here that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to use it. It looks psychedelic. So, I'm taking this as horizontal slices along the length. Now, when you cut cane slices, what I suggest, you line it in a straight line in front of you, and then you get over the top of it. Can you see how I'm like almost over the top? I know I'm out of camera, but you want your eyes to be, so my head's there, my eyes are in line with the end of the cane I'm chopping. Does that make sense? The reason behind that, if you're looking in at a diagonal, you're liable to not have your cane directly sliced flat. You're more likely to slice at an angle, and also you're more likely to not get a uniform size. You can line your cane up next to a ruler and then just slice on the measurements, but that's measuring and it's me. So I get my head over the top of it and I eyeball it. If you find your cane after a few slices is starting to squish, can you see? We are no longer that circle, we are an egg shape. Yeah? That's what happens if you keep slicing on the same side. So what I advise, put these to one side, they're still usable. Get your clay in front of you, go 2 slices over the top, 1, 2, get your finger, spin it a quarter, 1, 2, spin it back a quarter, 1, 2, back a quarter, 1, 2, back a quarter. And what you're doing then is reshaping it as you go. You end up with this little C shape, and it just keeps your cane in a nice round so you don't accidentally squash it. Yeah? Once you've got the slices that you want, I reckon this will be enough to get started with. You got some design choices. Are we going to squeeze these rounds into squares? Are we going to make the inside of the hairband patterned as well as the outside edge? Or are we going to just put a plain colour? So all these sorts of things are all things to choose. Now, you can line them up on greaseproof paper. I tend to just use my glass bench. I love my glass bench. Thank you to my dad for getting them to me. This surface is the best surface, I think. I've tried so many, but what you want is something that you can use your blade to take the clay off, but doesn't take any of the surface off as well. Now, you probably did tessellation back at school, but for circles you end up with little triangle spaces that you need to fill in. You got a choice. We can either form them into squares and then line them up, form them into a line as circles and then use the blade to push the ends flat, which I'll show you, which is probably what I'm going to do, or come in with little triangles and just push them into those gaps. It depends on what you want your end result to look like and how much time and patience you've got. All these things come in. I'm on the interest of time. I'm gonna just flatten the sides out once I've got them stuck together and rolled a little. I reckon that is definitely going to be enough for one headband, but again I could measure around that with a bit of string and then line it against there. But if it ends up being too short, I just make a bit more and attach it on. Now I'm making sure they're stuck down to my glass board properly. Push them down. You don't want them sliding off. I want to uniform out the size, so I'm rolling them flat. Like that, and that's making sure that they're stuck together properly. Now, if you wanted to put in little edge triangles, you're just literally going to get a tiny bit like that, form it into a triangle like that and just push it in the gap like so. See? I know it's a long way off. I can't pick it up. Right, like that. I ain't doing that. What I'm gonna do is come in with my blade and straighten. Sorry about the scratchy noise, but you know, blade on glass. You will get used to that noise. You will be living with it a lot for your claying journey. Sorry guys. Can you see? I've just squared them all off like that. Once I got the shape and thickness that I want, I can then strip these off, get my Alice band and put them on.
The noise is less bad on the stream than it is in real life. So
Oh,
okay.
good. So I'm lining it up with the masking tape. I don't want no masking tape showing, so like that. We're gonna push them down, make sure they're central, push them down like that. So personally, I would get a 10-pack because I got at least 4 more Alice bands out of all those new patterned offcuts. Personally, if you bought one, you'd be like, oh, but now I want to do another one with this, that and the other. So get a couple, and 10 of them for £3. That's pretty dang good. So that's them along the top line. Let's hold this up. Whoop.
No, it's not. Sorry,
we're just getting the focus. There we go. That's it along the top line. I just got a little bit more to do there. Straighten them up so they're not going wobbly like that. And I think I'm just going to get some plain black clay or just some of my scrap clay to go along the underside, or we can get slices of this and put it along the underside. They're the options really. Let's see how I go, because I don't really need more than one of each design. 2. Flip. Sometimes if I'm rushing, I'll do 5 cuts and then do a turn. It depends on how sharp your blade is. Which, by the way, do you know you can sharpen a blade on the bottom side of a drinking mug? This, if you're ceramics, if you're kiln firing anything, you have to have a little ring that hasn't got glaze on it, or the thing you're making will stick to the bottom of the kiln. So every drinking mug has a little ring around the underside that is unglazed. If you use that and run your blade like you're running it across the sharpening stone, it will sharpen your blade for you. You will end up with a grey mark where the bit of the blade's rubbed off, some of the metal scuffing, but that comes off with a scourer, and even so, it's on the underside of your cup. It's fine. The joys of being an artist and all that jazz, or just get a knife sharpener. Best one I've got, I got one like that, and what happens is it forms a Y, and there you're sharpening blades. And the reason why that is good is you can do both sides pretty easy. See? But these are tools you acquire over time. I would say sharpen your tissue blades because they're not the cheapest thing in the universe to keep shelling out for new ones, and blunt blade can really make it harder to just finish your project.
Sort of at the
Ooh,
bottom of the screen.
I am at the bottom of the screen. I am coming back up the top, don't worry. Here we go. Little line of them. How much do I need to do? So, like that. That'll do it. Right. And same thing again. Push it down. You're a double. Get off the top of that. You almost messed up my line of black daisies. There we go.
Oh, that was when I was trying to focus everywhere.
Flatten up these edges. And let's get that put on. Now you will find with this, once it's baked, it should still have the movement you want to be able to put it on. Unless you make this really thick. Thick polymer clay has very little movement to it. But thin stuff, you can literally bend it over and on itself. It's really quite flexible. And it is definitely flexible enough to... Oh my lord. Look at this. It ended exactly where I wanted.
Perfect.
You'd almost have thought I'd measured that. Wow. There you go. That's my luck. Better stop playing the lottery. Right, push them down firmly. Now we just got to cover the back and the sides.
Yvette says, first streamer I've got to see in a while. Neat idea.
Thank you.
That never happens. Yeah, measuring something perfectly
I know.
by eyeball never happens.
It never works for me either. So let's get some of the scrap. I'm going to use this. I'm going to cut some slices out of it. Doesn't matter so much, it's not really going to get seen.
It's the underside, isn't it?
It's the underside. But there's a million uses for scrap. Either it's pretty enough for you to use it as a veneer like this, or if it's not, use it underneath clay. So if I've made up a colour and I've realised I've got too little of it, I'll put a ball of scrap clay in the middle and then shape that colour around the outside. And you never notice that the inside's a different colour. I tell you, several of my statues, if they ever get dropped and smashed in half, it's going to look like a gobstopper in there.
Yvette says, I like that black pattern.
Thank you. Oh yeah, there's lots of them. We've got, from this, we've got this camo print. We've got twisty psychedelics going on. We've got, what else was there? That's more twisty psychedelics. We've got lumpy psychedelic. We've got more of this camo print. All sorts of things you can end up with. It is a joyful little thing messing around with cane scraps. And I think this one I'm actually going to use on the top of one of them. That or these. That's two. Ooh, can you focus, Jamie? Thank you. That's two strands of this twisted together. It's so nice. So yeah, but I do see it where people are like, oh, I got a lot of scrap clay. That's a waste that I had to bin all that. And I'm like, don't bin it.
Yvette says, I like the lumpy. Sheila Daniel says, hooray, you must be feeling better.
Yeah, I will do a video
Yvette says,
on CFS, the symptoms of it, the reason why I have so many rough days. It's a long-standing thing for me. I've had it 19 years now. I will get bad days. There will be more of them in the winter time than in the summertime, unless there's a heat wave, in which case I'm on my back.
Sheila said, hooray, you must be feeling a bit better again, but this time she put kisses. Oh, no, she put
Thank
kisses
you.
last time.
So any days that I'm well enough to do it, I will be totally on here, because I absolutely love chatting to you all and hanging out and showing you what I found interesting clay wise. Can you see I'm just pushing that in place and meeting the corners? Now it's up to you.
Dominic Berry says, welcome back, Carly.
Thank you, Dominic. It's up to you. You can come in with a bead of clay along that edge to make it look neater. Sorry, you can come in with a bead down the side to make it look neater, or you can just bring the clay over. But so long as all your paper, your masking tape paper, is covered, we then are good. Oop, here we go. But yeah, it's my normal, and it never gets me down. I'm generally a happy person, and I'm very aware that there are a lot of health conditions that are far worse than chronic fatigue syndrome. So I see me as lucky.
The artist says one of those patterns looked a bit like a giraffe or jaguar fur. An Alice band and giraffe pattern with little horns might be fun.
You can make pictures out of it. Here, I'll show you some of my other canes that I've done.
Evie
This
says,
is my spare cane box.
Evie says, what about pinning it softly?
That we're gonna do. Oh, let's see. Right. Whoop. Sorry, that was a bit loud.
You don't have a
Right.
comparison.
This was my extremely accurate one, which was a Celtic knot, and I brought that all the way down to that small. I have done big leaf patterns like that turn into that. But what I was going to show you about picture canes is some of my underside. Don't fall off. Let's put these over here in the pot. Some of my old picture canes. We have a turtle, so you can make big pictures. We've got a fish. We've got, have I got turtles, fishes? What else have I got? I did have cats and dogs and all sorts of things like that.
Show my soap dish if you like.
Oh, it's in the other room. I gotta go. That's in the spare room. This is one of my favourite canes. That's it bigger. It's a rose on a brown background.
That looks really good.
So yeah, and the spare extra bits I end up taking slices from and using in all sorts of other projects. Oh, can I give you those to put down? Thank you. So I can finish this off. The problem with keeping cane slices though is that they can dry out, and then it's really, really hard to work with them. So I try not to save canes. I know that people who are professional cane makers they seem to have a way to be able to reuse old cane. I find it hard, but it's not I'm not specialist on it at all. But there's always means and ways and stuff like that. Oop, right. So once I've got this covered, I'm going to rolling pin that inside and then fill in some of these gaps. I might come along with a bit of silver along the edge, but the edge doesn't show up. Can you see what I mean? You get a lot of the top, but the edge really is hidden in your hair. So it's not so critical, but what you need to make sure is that top side and that bottom side are properly joined and that there's no masking tape showing through. And what I'm doing is just pulling off little bits and patching in any area I can see masking tape. And if you're worried that you won't spot it, so it's white masking tape with a black and white clay, colour your masking tape in. All I would say is, if you're going to do that, put a layer of PVA glue over the top of it. Then it will still be a surface the clay can stick to, but what you won't get is ink transference onto your clay, because there's nothing more annoying than putting your clay down, going, oops, it's meant to be the other side, picking it back up to flip it over, and it's got a whole load of marks from what was underneath it. That is ridiculously annoying, I can tell you. Right, I'm just patching in some of these small little extra bits, and we'll roll it all out so that you don't get all these big lumpy bumpy bits. Right, that's covered. That side needs a little bit more. Can you see what I mean? So I can show you. I've got a little white space, whereas that's what I'm aiming for. It's fully covered. Afterwards we can come in and make it all look neat and tidy. It's pretty amazing though how scruffy you can be in the working process, and then still at the end look really like you've been working amazingly clean and tidily. Everything came in one piece and it was all perfectly smooth all throughout. You can really end up with something very, very polished from very, very scruffy. But yeah, so the thing that I find that I see that bothers me the most in other people's claying is them quitting too soon, saying it's a bad job, I'm not going to bother with this anymore, it's not worth my effort. When there is potential, there is times where you can, I understand doing that, because it is like just too far gone. But normally, no, I look at it and go, that's a great shame. There we go, that's sort of filled in. Now, let's give the side a wipe down and get all this off out the way. I don't want any of that bits of smew sticking to my nice top design and making it look rubbish. So if I go straight on with a rolling pin, it will stick to the rolling pin and pull off of this hairband. My reasoning behind why it will do that is I haven't got it stuck down to that hairband well enough. So before you come in to roll it out smooth, spend some time, pinch that, get it nicely fixed down, because especially that top design, if it rips, it's hard to get it to line back up again. Now we're going to come in and we're going to gently roll over that bottom.
That's just so pretty.
And what we're doing by rolling the bottom, the glass board on the underside is rolling the top. So we're basically doing two sides in one. Now, if you don't want to smooth it out so much that all the join lines are gone, that's fine. I think that looks quite nice, that tiled look. The other thing you can do as well, if you really like that tiled look, is cut the slices, bake them, then set that either in liquid clay or in some very soft polymer clay, so that you end up basically doing an actual mosaic, but with polymer clay tiles that you've made yourself. That can look really good. The other thing I've seen people do is get eggshells and use that like mosaics pushed into polymer clay. That can look really interesting as well. You're going to be really gentle on this side rolling, because you don't want to push it through to the metal. I'm just going to come along and rub my thumb along it just to bring out some of those join lines along that edge, because it looks a little scruffy. Here we go. And what I'll do, once we're done this, I will bake it up tonight, and next week I'll have it on stream. I'll be wearing it and I will share a photo of it baked up. You've got a choice if you want to varnish or you don't want to varnish. It will be fine either way. It is waterproof because polymer clay is waterproof. And yeah, you end up with a very expensive looking headband that you've not spent a lot of money on. Here we go, just smoothing those out like that. I'll hold it up for you in a second. But trust me, these join lines are a bit hideous, even though my hair's gonna hide it. There we go. Right, so this is it finished. We on focus, yeah?
Yep.
So that's the top side, all the way around. And you can see we're not cracking the clay whilst it's raw by moving it around, and I'll show you it baked that it will still be able to move like that. There we are, finished black and white Alice band. I plan to do lots of different colours on all of these, possibly using some of my old canes. I don't know yet. I hope you really like all this, and I hope you have a really good week. My plan for next week, I think I'm going to make a wheelchair, and I'm going to make a penguin to go in the wheelchair, but mainly I've shown you how to do a penguin.
Very pretty.
Thank you. But I'm thinking, yeah, a wheelchair is a technical thing to be able to make out of clay, because there's a lot of bits of load bearing, shall we say. If you end up making your own Alice bands, send me a picture. I love seeing other people's work. I really do. Any questions, any help you need, I am always around. Just message me. Like, share, follow. It really helps build my page. I'm at 250 subscribers on YouTube. I'm so pleased. It's been a year. We've been at this a year. I know. So I keep going at that because monetization don't happen until I'm at 1,000. Hint, hint, people. I'm broke. No. Anyway, have a wonderful week, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.